For 10 years, I did the work of 3 people while only being paid for 1. And for most of that time, I ignored the quiet voice in my head whispering, "This isn't normal. This isn't fair." But the moment that finally broke me happened on a rainy Tuesday morning in a conference room that smelled like old coffee and cheap perfume. My boss, Melissa Grant, perfect hair, forced smile, and a blazer that probably cost more than my monthly paycheck, stood at the head of the table with a proud grin. "I'm thrilled to announce," she began, practically glowing, "that Karen Lewis will be joining us as Senior Operations Coordinator." Senior Operations Coordinator, my position, the job I had been doing for nearly a decade, unofficially. The room politely clapped. I didn't. Because sitting beside Melissa was Karen, her church friend, someone I'd met twice before when she shadowed us. Someone who, on her second day in the office, asked me with full seriousness, "How do you open a spreadsheet file?" I remember blinking at her, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Now she sat beside Melissa proudly, smiling like she'd just cured cancer. Melissa continued, "Karen brings fresh energy and exceptional leadership qualities." My heart pounded. My jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I waited for Melissa to acknowledge my work. 10 years of reports, late nights, fixing crises, running the entire workflow while others clocked out on time. But instead, she turned toward me and said, "Cindy, you'll help train Karen and transition your responsibilities. No complaints, we're all a team." That was the moment something inside me shifted. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't swallow it like I always did. Instead, I stood up. Calm. Almost detached. Like I wasn't even fully in my body. From my bag, I pulled out the envelope I had written 3 months earlier. The one I never had the courage to hand over. I placed it gently on the table. Melissa frowned. "What's that?" "My resignation," I said. My voice wasn't shaky. It was steady. Cold. Final. "Effective immediately. And congratulations to Karen." Karen's smile collapsed. Melissa froze, then laughed. One of those sharp, condescending, "You're joking" laughs. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You're not resigning, sit down." "I already did the work of 3 people," I replied. "I'm not training a 4th. Her face twisted. The room went silent. "You don't get to decide when you leave," she snapped. I picked up my bag. "Actually, I do." Melissa slammed her hand on the table. "No, you're not quitting. We need you." Her voice echoed off the walls. Karen looked terrified. My coworkers stared at me the way people stare at someone walking away from a burning building. Part shock, part admiration, part disbelief. Then Melissa switched tactics. Panic now replacing anger. "Cindy, please, just stay until the end of the quarter. I'll talk to corporate. I'll get you a raise. Just don't do this." It was almost funny. For 10 years, she never cared. For 10 years, she dismissed me. For 10 years, I was invisible. Until the moment I walked away. "I've already been underpaid for a decade," I said softly. "I'm not giving you another minute." I turned toward the door, and that's when she screamed the words that sealed everything. "If you walk out now, I'll make sure no company ever hires you again." I stopped, slowly turned back, for the first time in 10 years. She looked small. I smiled, not out of kindness, but clarity. "Good luck with that," I said, "because you're going to be a lot busier than you think." I didn't explain. Not yet. But Melissa had no idea what was already in motion. Her voice followed me as I walked out of the conference room and straight toward the exit. "Cindy, get back here. I am not done with you." But I was done. With her, with the company, with being undervalued and overlooked. As the elevator doors closed, my pulse finally slowed, and a strange, overwhelming peace settled over me. For the first time in a decade, I chose myself. And Melissa? She hadn't even begun to realize what walking away really meant. Because the moment I stepped outside, the storm didn't end. It finally began. The moment the elevator doors shut, I expected relief. freedom, triumph. Instead, I felt nothing. My hands were shaking, my breath shallow. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like falling. For 10 years, that building was my life, my routine, my stability, my identity. Walking away wasn't just quitting a job. It was stepping into a future I hadn't prepared for. The parking lot looked the same as every morning, and every late night I dragged myself home. My old dented Honda sat exactly where I'd left it, but everything felt different, like the world had shifted without making a sound. I sat in the driver's seat and just stared through the windshield. What have I done? The question echoed in my head. I wasn't impulsive. I wasn't reckless. I was the reliable one, the one who showed up early, stayed late, fixed mistakes no one else noticed. But today, for the first time, I chose myself, and it terrified me. As I drove home, my phone buzzed nonstop. 10 missed calls, 4 voicemails, 3 texts from an unknown number. I didn't need to check to know who it was. When I got home, the silence hit me harder than Melissa's yelling. No spreadsheets waiting, no late emails from upper management, no workload looming over me. Just quiet. I changed into sweatpants and sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen. For the first time in a long time, I let myself feel everything. Anger, fear, exhaustion. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, it was my coworker and closest friend there, Lena. Coffee in one hand, grocery bag in the other. I figured you'd either be crying, drinking, or staring at a wall. I came prepared for all 3. I let out a laugh I didn't know I still had in me, and she stepped inside. So, you really did it? She asked gently as she put the groceries down. I really did. She whistled softly. Melissa is losing her mind. HR is in meltdown. Karen is crying in the bathroom because she doesn't know how to open the quarterly forecast system. I couldn't help it. I laughed again. The mental image was too perfect. But then Lena looked at me more seriously. Are you okay? I hesitated. I don't know. She nodded. Then let's start with food. We sat at my kitchen counter, sharing pasta salad from the bag and drinking coffee. The normalcy felt strange, but comforting. I need to tell you something, she said finally. Something I probably should have told you months ago. Her voice had changed. I put my fork down. Go on. She took a breath. Melissa never intended to promote you. The board approved budget for a senior role 3 years ago. You were the only candidate HR recommended, but Melissa blocked it every time. My stomach tightened. Why? She told them, and I quote, Cindy isn't leadership material, she's a workhorse. I felt the words like a punch. A workhorse. Not valued, not respected. Just used. And Karen? I asked. She'd been planning that hire for months. She told some of the executive team that Karen had God-given leadership potential and that she was meant to guide the department. HR pushed back. Karen failed every technical skills requirement, but Melissa forced it through. I blinked, stunned. So that's it, I whispered. 10 years, and I was never anything more than a placeholder. Lena reached over and squeezed my hand. You were the backbone of that department, Cindy. Everyone knows it except the one person who didn't want to. I stared at the tabletop, anger simmering deep inside. Not explosive, but controlled, focused. What are you going to do now? She asked. The truth was, I didn't know. I'd never allowed myself to imagine anything beyond that company. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail notification. Please tell me that's not Melissa again. Lena groaned, but the name on the screen made me sit up straighter. Unknown number, voicemail transcription. Hello, Cindy. My name is Daniel Reed. I'm with Corporate Compliance. We need to speak with you regarding recent events. My pulse kicked up. Compliance didn't call unless something was serious, and Melissa screaming after me in that conference room wasn't the only thing she'd regret. Because I had documentation, Emails, project files, messages proving I'd been doing the work she refused to hire for. Proof of mismanagement. Proof of favoritism. Proof they ignored. Until now. Lena looked at me slowly. "What are you thinking?" I swallowed hard. "I'm thinking quitting wasn't the end." My voice felt steady, certain. It might be the beginning. I waited 2 hours before calling compliance back. Not because I was hesitant, but because I needed to think. And calm down. My emotions were tangled. Anger, fear, exhaustion, and something else I hadn't felt in years. Power. After 10 years of being controlled, dismissed, and used, I finally had leverage. When I finally dialed, the line clicked after barely one ring. "Cindy Miller?" The voice was deep, professional. "Yes. Speaking. This is Daniel Reed from Corporate Compliance First. Thank you for returning my call. We received reports of a potential policy violation involving your departure. Before I proceed with formal questions, can you confirm you are no longer employed by Evergreen Solutions?" "Yes," I answered. "I resigned this morning." There was a short pause, the kind where you can almost hear someone raise an eyebrow. "I see. I'd like to schedule a formal interview with you about the circumstances surrounding your resignation. We've received several internal complaints about your former manager." Complaints, plural. My grip tightened on the phone. "I understand," I said. "When do you want to talk?" "Now," he replied. "If you're available." Available as if my calendar wasn't permanently empty now. "Yes, I'm available." "Good. I'll send a secure link so the call can be recorded." A moment later, an email appeared with a corporate recording notice attached. I poured myself a glass of water and clicked join. Daniel appeared on screen. Late 40s, calm expression, dark suit, the kind of man who had no time for nonsense. "Thank you for agreeing to this," he began. "Before we start, you should know you're protected under corporate whistleblower policy. Nothing you say can be used against you professionally." Protected. A word I'd never associated with that job. He continued. "We've received multiple complaints regarding favoritism, positional manipulation, and mishandling of internal promotions under your former supervisor. We also have reason to believe she may have violated internal hiring protocols." A slow breath escaped me. So I wasn't the first casualty. "I'd like to hear your experience," Daniel said, "starting from when you first noticed irregularities." For the first time in 10 years, somebody actually wanted the truth. So I told him, not dramatically, not vengefully, just plainly. The facts that had slowly crushed me over a decade. How I took on increasing workloads after layoffs. How promises of promotion were dangled and never delivered. How every request for evaluation or compensation was dismissed. How I was told to be patient, while the company used my loyalty like free currency. Daniel said nothing as I spoke, only jotting notes, occasionally nodding. Then I reached the part about Karen. "How long was she in the office before the promotion announcement?" he asked. 2 weeks. "And during that time, was she performing senior-level responsibilities?" I exhaled a humorless laugh. "She didn't know how to open Excel." Daniel's expression finally shifted, eyebrows tightening, posture straightening. "And you were instructed to train her to take over your responsibilities?" "Yes." "And your resignation, would you say it was voluntary or forced by the circumstance?" I paused. Because that question hit differently. Forced resignation wasn't just words. It had legal meaning. My throat tightened slightly, but I answered anyway. I resigned because I realized my work would always be used but never valued. And because the decision to hire Karen made it clear the promotion was never based on merit. I resigned because staying meant accepting disrespect. Daniel typed for several seconds. Then he asked a question I didn't expect. "Do you have documentation?" "Oh, I did emails, task lists, performance reviews, message threads showing I was repeatedly told the role wasn't ready yet. Spreadsheets proving workload distribution, screenshots of Karen asking basic questions." "I have everything," I said quietly. "More than enough." Daniel leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose like someone who had finally confirmed a suspicion. "Good," he said. Then Cindy, this may be bigger than you know. I blinked. What do you mean? Your former manager is already under preliminary review? Favoritism is one issue, but there may be misallocated training and hiring funds tied to her decisions. Your testimony and documentation could play a key role in the investigation. My heart thudded. So, what happens now? We'll need your evidence, and depending on the findings, the board may reach out. The board, not HR, not managers, not office politics, the people at the top. When the call ended, I sat still for several minutes. Everything felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Melissa. We need to talk. Come back now or things will get very difficult for you. My fear evaporated. For once, she wasn't in control. I typed one sentence and hit send. You should worry less about me, and more about compliance. For 2 days, things went strangely quiet. No calls, no emails, no angry messages from Melissa threatening my career or begging me to return. Silence should have felt peaceful. But instead, it made every part of me tense, because silence in corporate life never meant things were fine. It meant something was happening behind closed doors. I kept thinking about that call with compliance. About the calm confidence in Daniel's voice. About the fact that for once, someone actually believed me. Still, doubt crept in. What if nothing came of it? What if Melissa twisted the narrative before anyone could prove anything? What if I had just blown up my entire life for nothing? The third morning, I got my answer. At exactly 9:02 a.m., my phone rang. Not a random number this time. A number with a company caller ID Evergreen Solutions corporate board office. My stomach flipped and I answered. Hello, Cindy. This is Barbara Mallory. I'm calling on behalf of the board of directors. The chairman would like to schedule a meeting with you regarding your resignation and the ongoing investigation. A meeting with the board. Not management. Not HR. Not some mid-level compliance review. The top. Yes, I said quietly. I'm available. Good, she replied. We'd like you here today at 3 p.m. Please bring all documentation and evidence you referenced in your compliance interview. I hung up and just sat there, heart racing. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about exposing something deeply wrong. At 2:45, I walked through the revolving doors of Evergreen Solutions one last time, except this time, instead of feeling small and replaceable, I felt grounded. Solid. A security guard, not one I recognized, escorted me upstairs. That alone told me things had escalated. When I entered the conference room, half the board was already seated, including the chairman, Richard Holloway, a man known for being both fair and notoriously intolerant of internal corruption. Across the room sat Melissa, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes full of the kind of rage people get when they finally lose control. Next to her sat Karen, looking pale and stiff like she wished she could sink into the carpet. Daniel from compliance sat near the end of the table with a neatly organized binder. My binder. Cindy? Richard greeted, gesturing to an open chair. Please sit. I did. My hands were steady. My voice felt ready. Richard began. We've reviewed the initial findings from compliance, including the documentation you provided. Before we proceed, do you stand by everything you submitted? I do. He nodded slowly. Then he turned to Melissa. Melissa, you indicated to Human Resources that Cindy resigned due to emotional instability and performance decline. Do you still stand by that statement? My breath caught. That's what she told them? Melissa lifted her chin. Absolutely. She's been overwhelmed for months. I tried to support her, but she became hostile and uncooperative. Daniel slid a printed email forward. Is this your email stating that Cindy was performing the majority of operational tasks independently and was the only person capable of maintaining workflow stability? Melissa froze. Karen shifted uncomfortably. Yes or no? Richard pressed. Melissa swallowed. That email was taken out of context. Was Karen hired based on skill and qualifications? Another board member asked flatly. Melissa opened her mouth, but Karen spoke first. Didn't apply, she said quietly. Melissa asked me to take the position. I thought it was temporary. The room shifted, energy tightening. And did you know Cindy would train you? Karen hesitated. She told me it was part of her job. I didn't question it. Richard folded his hands. Cindy, please share your experience in your own words. So I did, clearly, calmly, without dramatics. I described 10 years of unpaid labor disguised as loyalty. How my workload tripled while others coasted. How promotions were promised then blocked. How favoritism replaced merit. How my resignation wasn't a choice. It was the only way to protect myself. When I finished, the room was silent. Finally, Richard spoke. Thank you. You may step outside while we deliberate. As I stood, Melissa hissed under her breath. You'll regret this. For the first time, I met her stare directly. No, I said quietly. The only thing I regret is letting you get away with it for so long. I stepped out, closed the door, and exhaled. Shaky but proud. Whatever happened next, one thing was finally true. I wasn't powerless anymore. The wait outside that boardroom felt longer than the 10 years I'd spent at that company. I paced the hallway, replaying every detail of my testimony. Part of me feared I'd gone too far. Another part of me knew I hadn't gone far enough. At minute 20, the door finally opened. The security guard nodded at me. They're ready for you. My chest tightened, but I walked inside. Everyone was seated again. Melissa's face was flushed, her composure cracked. Karen looked like she might cry. Daniel's expression remained neutral, but there was a slight nod, like, whatever happens next, you did your part. Richard gestured to the chair. Cindy, thank you for your patience. We've reached a decision. I sat, spine straight, hands clasped tightly in my lap. Richard continued. After reviewing statements, documentation, and recorded performance history, the board has concluded that your resignation was not voluntary, but the result of ongoing retaliation, role mismanagement, and a breach of internal policy. My breath hitched. The words felt surreal. Richard turned to Melissa. Effective immediately, Melissa Grant. Your employment with Evergreen Solutions is terminated. Additionally, internal audit will conduct a full review of all hiring decisions, expense authorizations, and promotion overrides executed under your authority. Melissa shot up from her chair. You can't be serious. I'm the best manager this department has had. Richard's voice stayed calm. No, you were the most disruptive. Security escorted her out while she shouted threats, accusations, and finally, silence. When the doors closed behind her, Karen sank lower in her chair, eyes glassy. Karen, Richard addressed her next. Your role was acquired through improper hiring channels. You will not be continuing in your position. However, he added gently, you are not being accused of wrongdoing. Someone exploited your trust. We suggest you seek proper training or employment elsewhere. She nodded shakily, whispering, I understand. Then Richard turned back to me. Cindy, he said, voice softening. You gave this company a decade of dedication we did not properly recognize. That ends today. I blinked, unsure I'd heard him correctly. We would like to offer you the position of Senior Operations Manager, effective immediately, with full back pay for the wage difference between that title and your previous salary for the last 3 years. Additionally, we are implementing new policy measures, anonymous reporting, workload audits, and multi-party hiring approval, based on your recommendations and testimony. For a second, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, eyes burning. It wasn't just the offer. It was the acknowledgement, the validation, the fact that someone finally saw what I had carried alone for so long. I appreciate the offer. I finally managed. But before I give an answer, I need to ask one thing. Richard nodded. Of course. If I return, will the culture actually change? Not just on paper, but in reality? The room went quiet. Then Richard leaned forward. Cindy, the moment you walked out, we realized how much the company depended on your integrity, not just your labor. Leadership does not want to lose another employee like you. nor repeat the mistake that led to this meeting. I let out a slow breath. Then yes, I said finally, I'll accept. Relief moved through the room like a quiet ripple. Daniel closed his binder, a faint smile appearing for the first time. Good, because Evergreen needs leaders, not placeholders. 3 months later, everything felt different. Employees spoke up. Processes were fair. Workload distribution became transparent. People who once avoided eye contact now stopped me in hallways to say thank you. And Karen? I later heard she enrolled in community college to learn business administration. For the first time, she wanted to earn a position, not inherit one. The biggest shift, though, happened inside me. For years, I believed loyalty meant endurance, silence, sacrifice. But leaving, speaking up, showed me something else. Loyalty doesn't mean letting yourself be walked on. Respect isn't earned by being quiet. And sometimes the biggest change begins the moment you finally say, enough. Now, when new employees join, I tell them, your value isn't measured by how much you can tolerate, it's measured by what you refuse to. Because standing up for yourself isn't unprofessional, it's necessary.